Hi folks, thanks so much for joining me today. In this video, I'd like to show you a very simple, straightforward technique for converting standard canning jars into specialized mushroom cultivation vessels. Never give up! What we're going to be doing is modifying the jar lid so that it allows for air exchange and allows us to inoculate sterilized mushroom substrate with a liquid culture syringe. And if you're in the market for some cultures, you can purchase gourmet and medicinal varieties from Fungaia at fungaia.life. Or if you're looking for a wider selection, go check out our friends at True Blue Genetics, and they will definitely take care of you. Now, the general principle here is always the same no matter what kind of mushroom cultivation you're doing. And eventually, you're probably going to want to move on to the sort of industry standard mushroom grow bags. These are specialized bags for mushroom cultivation. I'll talk more about that in a later video. There's a lot of advantages to these, but there's also some advantages to using jars. And when you're first starting out, I really recommend that you stick with jars for at least your first few rounds anyway. And I still use them for a lot of different reasons. No matter what vessel you're using, you want a sealed vessel that you can sterilize with your mushroom substrate inside, inoculate it with your liquid culture, and seal it off so that it can grow without any competing microorganisms, but is still able to breathe because mycelium needs oxygen just like animals. In order to create some kind of air filtration, we can buy specialized mushroom bags like these that come with these sterile air filter patches. For jars, I highly recommend getting these synthetic autoclavable, sterilizable synthetic filter discs, and there's a link to that in the description of the video. And if you're on a budget, you can always cut up in a stuffed animal or go to a sewing supply shop and just get yourself some of this polyester fiber fill. So, I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. The first is the simple, cheap, easy, quick way, and that'll get you through at least your first couple of rounds if you just want to give it a try. And then I'm going to show you how to do it a way that's going to be a lot more lasting and also, I think, a little bit more effective in the long run. When you buy mason jars from the store, they're always going to come with the lids, usually pre-installed. And for obvious reasons, it makes a lot of sense to just go ahead and use those lids. The problem with using the lids that come on the jars is they're made out of just regular steel and they will rust. So after the first few uses, they start to kind of break down. So the first thing you want to do is just make some holes in your lid. And you can drill them out. It's a little cleaner that way. But you can also just take a screwdriver or any old sharp tool, a nail or whatever. You know, it's always good to have the right tool for the job. And then go ahead and make 2 holes in the lid of your jar. You could do more, but generally 2 is a good number because you want one for your inoculation port to use your syringe, and then you want the other for your air filter. So here's our second hole here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create an injection port using silicone, and then we're going to create our air filter using our polyester fiber fill. It's also worth noting that there are a lot of products out there right now that make this a lot easier. I will say I have used there's rubber injection ports that you can buy. Now there's self-adhesive filter discs. I know a lot of people are using those. They like them. They make it really easy and clean to modify jars. I have, however, had some issues with them. And in general, this is such a cheap, easy way. It works well for me. And sometimes, I don't know, I don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to show you the way that I first learned how to do this. I've never had any problems with this technique. And you know, 1 tube of silicone costs you about $7. And that's a lot cheaper than buying injection ports on the internet. This will make dozens, if not hundreds of them. One thing that I forgot to mention is the silicone that we're going to be using. So really anything that's marked 100% silicone off the shelf at your local hardware store will work. You might read on mushroom cultivation forums and stuff that you specifically need high temperature RTV silicone. That's not the case. If you look at the fine print on pretty much any 100% silicone tube, you'll see that it has a functional temperature range far beyond, this goes up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit of service temp, which is quite a bit more than the 250 degrees that we're trying to achieve in the steam sterilization process. So any old silicone will do as long as it says 100% silicone on the bottle. There's different colors. I usually go for clear specifically because it makes it easier to find the hole with the needle once you're doing your inoculation. The other thing you're going to want is some nitrile gloves. Don't use vinyl gloves because they'll react to the solvents in the silicone. I start by applying a thick blob of silicone to cover the hole. Then, using my gloved finger, I swirl it to make an even, round shape. I want to leave it at least 1/4 of an inch thick, preferably more. This is the cheapest way to make your filter. It's not 100% effective, but it does generally work. And what you're looking for is 100% polyester fiber fill. One of these bags is about $12, and it'll go a really long way. Okay, so you want to pinch about that big. And it may be a little smaller could do, but the main thing here is we're going to try and bunch it up as tight as we can and fit as much as possible through the hole that we made in the jar. This is the screwdriver I use to poke the hole, so it makes sense that that would be a helpful thing to use to stuff it back in. And kind of work your way around, and if you're really working with a big tough knot of polyfill, it'll actually be pretty challenging to stuff it through the hole. Once you've got a good bit on the other side, you can go ahead and kind of pull part of it through. I like to sort of wiggle it around and then tug on it from the other side. And if it's really in there, you know, especially with this, we just punched a hole through, so it has sort of the metal shards in there that'll create kind of a barb. And it's actually like really pretty firmly in there. And then this last bit that's sticking out the top, we don't need all of that on there. So just for cleanliness' sake and to kind of make things a little easier to manage when we're inoculating, I just go ahead and cut that off. So there is a pretty tight polyester filter. There's very little chance that anything is going to get through that besides just a tiny, minute amount of oxygen. So as you can see, that's a very simple, straightforward technique. It's very cheap, and it works pretty well for me for quite a while. However, the polyfill does not work as effectively at filtering out mold and other microorganisms. I find that the polyfilter method is really, really poor for doing liquid culture, where bacteria and yeast are a much bigger problem. It tends to work pretty well for grain, but overall, I really recommend that if you're going to be serious about mushroom cultivation, that you take the time and make the investment to make some of the lids the way that I'm about to show you. They're going to hold up a lot better over time, but more importantly, they're going to be a lot more effective at actually keeping out potential contaminants like mold, bacteria, and yeast. Now, the main thing here is that we're relying heavily on these specialized filter discs, and these are really hard to beat. They're also fairly expensive. I think they're about $1 a piece at the link there in the description if you want to go buy them there. They are a little bit cheaper when you buy a quantity. You get 100 at a time or whatever. They're super worth it, and you can actually reuse and re-sterilize these quite a few times. And I'll just tell you, I generally double them up just because I'm that paranoid, but that's because I'm selling liquid culture as my business and I have to rely on a much higher level of success than what you're doing at home. If you lose a jar or two, that's pretty standard. So one of these per jar is a good amount. These discs are thick, and at least supposedly they're able to keep out any particulate matter larger than 0.2 microns, which is very, very, very tiny, and would keep out almost all pathogens. Now, you can go ahead and use these filter discs with a standard canning jar lid if you want. But like I said, they will rust over time. And overall, there's a number of different reasons that I really prefer using these plastic lids. The main reason is they don't rust, and they're really easy to drill and work with because it's just a soft plastic material. I also like the way that you can tighten them down, and they kind of just, the way that they squish onto the jars. They also vent really nicely during sterilization. So I really recommend these. Unfortunately, I haven't found a source for them other than Walmart. I have gotten knockoff lids off of the other websites, and one of the things I've had to look for is sometimes they have like a lip on the inside that prevents these filters from actually getting to tighten down. And I've also bought ones that just melted in the pressure cooker. They were not made out of as high temperature resistant a plastic. I believe these are polypropylene, and in general, it's just a good thing to be aware of that anything marked with PP5 or the number 5 little recycling icon is generally polypropylene and will withstand autoclave temperatures. That is the steam sterilization of a pressure cooker. Okay, so for this you'll need to drill in a bit. I just grabbed the freshest looking bit that I had. This is a 5/16. I don't know, 1/4 inch is fine, 3/16 is fine. Larger is okay. In general, for an injection port, you don't want to make it too big or too small. We still want air to be able to pass through these lids. One of the beauties of using these filters is that we can really make as many holes in this lid as we want, because all the lid is really doing is squeezing the filter down onto the lip of the mason jar when we tighten it down. So I usually drill 3 holes because I like prime numbers. The other thing that's really important, you want something behind it that your bit can bite into. But one thing to know about these lids is they crack really easily. So if you put a lot of pressure, if you're using a dull drill bit and you're trying to really smash it through, you'll often crack the lid, which isn't necessarily that big of a problem, but it just kind of makes a mess. And it's generally a lot better to have it on a flat surface where there's pressure behind the lid so you don't crack it open.
I use a countersink bit to clean up the holes. Then I apply the silicone the same way I showed you earlier, first squeezing out a big blob, then swirling it with my gloved finger to make a round domed shape. This pushes a little bit of silicone through the hole, which makes a nice seal once I press the filter into place. Then I leave it be to cure overnight.
So that's really all there is to it. As you can see, it's very simple. If you're going to go the cheap route, you can just take the whole box of mason jars and just make holes in the lids with it in the box and silicone them right there in place. It's actually easier just leaving the lid on the jar. With these, I usually just drill all of them all at once, and then I'll lay them out in a big line and do all the silicone, put all the filters in. You have some working time with silicone, and then it's also really important to let it cure for about 24 hours before you use it. So you'll have to plan ahead a little bit on this one. Once you've got a dozen or so lids, you can start running your grain through your pressure cooker and then inoculate with your liquid culture syringe. This is one of the simplest and most approachable ways to start in mushroom cultivation. So make sure to check out my video on preparing grain spawn. And then, of course, if you're in the market for some genetics, you can get your gourmet and medicinal varieties through the Fungaia shop. And if you're looking for that wider selection, don't forget to check out our partners at True Blue Genetics. They do a fabulous job, and they have an unbelievably huge selection. And if you do, make sure you use the coupon code Fungaia, and that'll get you 20% off at checkout. Thanks for checking out the channel. Mycelium, 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 mycelium. Hi folks, thanks so much for checking out this video. I just wanted to let you know, since it's been over 2 years since I posted the last one, I have a ton of videos in the works. I am committed to taking a stab at this whole YouTube thing. So I'll be releasing videos hopefully once a week or every couple of weeks for a little while here. And obviously have a long way to go. I'm still learning the ropes, learning the tools, but I love teaching people about mushroom cultivation, and I'm so excited to share this journey with you. So make sure to subscribe. I appreciate you.